Everyone, welcome once again to Vicious Chats. I'm Tim Vicious. With me today, she is a content creator, she is a producer, she is a Rotten Tomatoes reviewer. Please give it up for the oh so lovely miss, the final girl herself, is Chauncey Robinson. How you doing?
I'm good. Hi. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you on. So let me ask you first and foremost. One thing I'm curious on is, yeah, how do you get to be a certified Rotten Tomatoes reviewer? Because I know they kind of have that two different sections where they have the critic section and the fan section.
Yeah, well, it takes some time of putting out reviews. I would imagine probably being published in certain places that are like considered quote unquote legitimate publications and whatnot, or if you're on YouTube having a crap ton of subscribers for those who are just straight up YouTubers or whatever. And I remember when I applied, because you apply, and I remember when I applied, it took months before I heard back from them, and I kind of forgot about it. So when I got my acceptance letter, I was like, oh, I forgot I actually I was like, this is great though, because I mean, I will say, Rotten Tomatoes gets a lot of flack for sometimes I think justified reasons, other times because some people, they hate, but it's, for what it's worth, I will say it does open up doors because of the fact of the weight that Rotten Tomatoes has. So, when they take an initiative to, bring certain people in there and things like that, it really does help you get a leg up in being seen as legitimate by, studios and things like that, because, it's that almighty Rotten Tomatoes score for a lot of people.
Yeah,
They really care
yeah,
about that still. So
yeah. Because I'm from that generation. I grew up where if you saw in the commercial it said Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up, then you were like, oh wow,
yeah,
that's something. But in the same breath, Siskel and Ebert, they also they look down on the original Star Wars immensely. So, and I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so
okay.
that's always kind of like where it's like, okay,
I think I
yeah,
liked Ebert because I loved him, but like I also liked him because I felt like he was nicer to horror movies. Like there were some horror movies that it was like whatever, but there were horror movies that he genuinely, I think, at a time where critics, and they still do it now, where some critics kind of turn their nose up at the horror genre. He didn't necessarily, especially if it was actually had good storytelling and stuff. So I think it just shows also the power of the service that as a critic that you do for people. You got some people, I feel like as critics, or I call some of them reviewers, because the whole thing is just kind of, this is what I like, and I have and never really kind of acknowledging that maybe it's a lot of bias that they're going with. No one's completely objective, but it's also understanding that you're not just, as a critic, you're not just watching this entertainment for yourself. You're watching it with the eye of who could get something out of it and what is there to get out of it. And some people, the way they function is kind of like, it's very tunnel vision. So it's nice, I think, that there is still a collective of critics out there who are kind of keeping that tradition of like Ebert and the earlier ones even before him, where it was really about an art form, and being a critic kind of was seen as like a skill set and not just something someone did because they suddenly wanted to start talking about it. So
yeah, yeah. Because and I always made the reference and analogy before. We all may not be. We all may have our own special skills or this that. Like, I'm good at doing manual labor. My son, he's really good at athletics. I suck at athletics. But one thing we can all kind of narrow down on is when we see a movie trailer or we see small little snippets of a movie, we could just automatically look and be like, yeah, this is going to be something that this got my interest, or yeah, that's going to be good. Or if it's going to be like one of those, or as my son likes to say, I'll watch it if I'm bored on a Saturday.
yeah.
That's when that's his rating system on if it's bad, he won't watch it. watch it if he's bored on a Saturday. It's well, if I can't find nothing else to put on, hey, click, and then he's got his faves.
Yeah. I'm like that too. You know, it's so funny. My boyfriend, one of the things he does, like, he watches a lot of movies and things like that. And my brother was like that too, and I'd joke with him, I'd be like, that you guys just are like non-discriminatory when it comes to movies. You just kind of take in anything and everything. And the joke is always like, I'm the critic, but I don't like watching a lot of films sometimes because I think because I take in, I'm like a sponge, like when I'm sitting there with the film, I'm really trying to experience it. So for me, I can get overstimulated like quickly. So it's like, I can't watch one movie, then watch 2 more and 3 more. So when people are like saying, I binged watched the whole first season on Netflix, I'm like, how? Like, I can't, after the first 4 episodes, unless it's Castlevania, because those are like just 20 minutes, whatever. But it was like for like 60-minute shows and stuff. I'm like, how are you sitting there that whole time and not needing a moment to decompress? And so for me, it has to be a movie that it's my comfort movie like Jaws or something for me to be like, okay, I can watch this all the time, every time. Other movies, I kind of have to, even if I want to see it, I have to kind of work my way up to like being in the mood to like sit down with it, which, I'll admit it can be hard as a film critic because sometimes it's like, oh, I got a new screener. I don't feel like that right now. Like, I don't want to wait, but I should also do this review.
So has there ever been like any kind of movies where you're like, where you just looked at it and like, you just got basic info on it and you're like, oh, something tells me I'm going to regret this tomorrow?
No,
I mean, not to like make it sound like I'm asking you to throw anything under the bus. I don't mean to make it come off like that. I'm sorry.
I don't mind. I don't like, not really. I mean, a lot of the time I'm pretty open to a film because I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, especially if the filmmaker or the studio or whatever reaches out to me. Yes, I can admit that there are times where I get a pitch to look at something and I read the synopsis and I see what it looks like and I'm like, no, this you're barking up the wrong tree. I know myself, I'm not gonna, but I think for the most part, I think the movies I've actually sat down to kind of look at and see what I can glean from them, a lot of time I'm even pleasantly surprised. Some movies that I think, oh, I'm not gonna like this, I'm like, oh, I actually ended up really enjoying this film. Like, I wasn't sure I was gonna like X for a bit. I loved Maxine, which is these are the T West movies about the porn stars and things like that, a horror movie. And I didn't think I was gonna like X initially, and I really loved it. But I didn't care to see Pearl because I was like, I'm really not interested in the movie about the villain who is, whatever. And then I really liked Maxine. So it depends, another one, Ari Aster. Oh my gosh, I could not stand Midsummer. Like, Hereditary was okay. I liked the first 2 acts. The third act lost me. And then Midsummer was just like, seriously. And so I, at that point, was like, I'm not going to do that to myself ever again. Midsummer was that movie where I was like, okay, Hereditary was, and then I sat through Midsummer. I was like, why did I give it another shot? And then I did it again with Beau is Afraid. And I was actually happy I did that because I really loved Beau is Afraid, which, funny enough, a lot of Ari Aster fans don't like. And they love Midsummer. And I love Beau is Afraid and I didn't like Midsummer. So I don't know.
I mean, there's only one movie I've ever watched that where like I only got partway through and I was like, all right, that's it. I can't no more. It was Cannibal Holocaust. I was about maybe doing the math in my head. I was like maybe 8 or 10 at the time when I first saw it. I didn't get past the turtle scene. I got up to there and I was like, no, I can't do no more. No, that's it. And it wasn't because of like the gore. It was just like it felt so wrong. It made my stomach turn.
Yeah.
And that's the only movie that's ever done that. And I watched all the Hostels.
Oh, yeah, Hostels.
Yeah. I can't even bring that up. That one movie up around my one friend, or she kills me because she'll kill me because she was saying she saw it and she like almost puked in the theater.
Yeah. No, that's my thing with like I have not seen Cannibal Holocaust because of the fact that I know what happens in it and things like that. And I'm just like, there are just certain movies where I'm like, listen, it's not for me. I'm not gonna get anything out of it. And it's one of those things where you kind of have to, you got to play it by ear a lot of time, because you hate to say that as a critic, where it's like, I refuse to watch this film. But some movies where you hear you're like, listen, this is not, I can't, I'm not going to. And some movies I can't finish, not because they're not good, but because they're so effective. Like, I have never fully sat through John Carpenter's The Thing, because
really?
I can't sit through that. It grosses me out. Like that clip of the stomach opening up and eating that guy's arms. The thing that sent me over the edge was the dog scene, where there's like this conglomerate body of a dog. And I was like, and I love animals, so I got 3 cats. I'm just like, I can't. This movie is so gross, and not in a bad way, because I love John Carpenter. Like, I've watched every other movie he's done. Like, I just rewatched The Prince of Darkness the other weekend, because that is such a weird movie that mixes like biblical horror, which is my jam, and like sci-fi with Jesus being extraterrestrial possibly. Like, I love me some John Carpenter, but I was like, kudos, and They Live is my jam. And I'm like, kudos to you. I can't sit through The Thing. I can't do it. I can't sit through the thing, because I'm like, it's just so gross, and I'm so uncomfortable about that dog and people's friggin' neck coming up, and like,
getting all wiggly and moving.
I'm like,
it's funny that it's funny that you brought up that you got 3 cats. My son actually talked to me, and he was saying to me the other day, "Hey, Dad, Mom's cat had babies about 2 months ago. Can we keep one of them?" And then after having one of those long conversations about bringing a baby animal into the home, we took him in. He decided to name him Rooster.
Aw, that's so
He's
cute.
Rooster the cat.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures I put up on my Twitter on it, but
I don't know if I've seen him. No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
You're part of the Cat Alliance now.
Yeah. And which is funny, because I have a dog also, and she has taken to him, and she's very much so mama dog.
Yes.
She takes to him like she's her own. And now my son jokes around saying, "Oh, no, he's mine. I'm his dad." I'm like, so I'm grandpa by proxy. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
so
that.
I'm a cat. So folks, I'm officially a cat grandpa.
Yes. Welcome. I love animals. Like, those are, I didn't get to have pets growing up, except fish, like briefly. My father, he just does not care for cats or dogs. And my mom, she's okay with animals. Like, when she comes to visit from Jersey, she loves my cats, that she calls them her grand cats, because I say these are the only grandchildren you're getting out of me right now. So it's just like, that's what you're getting.
I say all the time, my dog is the closest I'm gonna have to a daughter.
Yeah, because I mean, big ups to people want it, but it's like, I feel like as a millennial, I feel like many of us are just kind of like, do I want those kids? Probably not F them kids, but like, it's kind of like, I'm actually okay. I got things I want to do. So,
but yeah, I'm very much so. I'm very much so the same way with animals. Like, I will go all John Wick on someone if they mess with a dog or a cat or any kind of animal in any kind of way. And I've gotten into major fights with people over it. Yeah. And I'm a South Philly kid. I grew up in South Philadelphia. I don't know. I grew up in Philadelphia. I moved to the upper western part of Pennsylvania at the beginning of 2005. Like, I don't know if you know the shape of PA, but it's that little spot where the chimney is. Like,
okay.
And I'm right. Yeah, so I'm right there by Lake. Like, if I look out my house, I could see Lake Erie.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. No, I have some family because one of the things, I feel like I'm one of the few who moved further away because all my family's in Jersey, most of them. And so when some people move out of Jersey, they usually go to Philly. Like that's the that's the furthest most people go, Philly or somewhere down south. So
well, in all fairness, Philly's kind of like Philly looks at Jersey as their backyard. So, and this is on how you know I'm definitely a Philly boy. Asking this, North or South Jersey?
Where me, I'm in Essex. My family's in Essex County, so it's like central.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's Newark or Brick City.
Yeah,
it's Newark Brick City.
Yeah, because I would go to Rock Out in Camden all the time. They would do they would do concerts there, and would hit Wildwood every summer.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Wildwood. Yeah.
We
used to do Six Flags all the time, and Six Flags was the place. I didn't know much about Disneyland or anything, but I knew about Six Flags in Jersey because that's where you went if you went to that's where my family would take me, like Six Flags Great Adventures. That was my theme park until I got out here, and now I guess I'm a Disney adult at this point. I have converted to Disneyland. That's my jam.
It's okay. It's okay.
I did Universal for a bit, and I was like, I think I'm gonna pledge allegiance to the mouse. I think that's what I did Disneyland, and I was like, you know what? I'm sorry, Universal, but this is it right here. Disneyland is where it's at. But yeah, like I love animals. It's kind of a thing for me. I make no secret about it that if I'm watching a movie and something happens to an animal unnecessarily, I am taking away a point. I'm like, you know what? I think that's cheap writing, especially in horror. I make it plain where I'm just like, I think it's cheap writing when you kill a cat or something like that, just to kind of prove that a villain's a villain. They're already killing people. They don't got to kill an animal for me to know they're a bad person, So I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, not to actually, that brings up another point I was going to ask. Like, do you got like a set list? You just kind of brought it up in a way, like a set list of like what your big do's and don'ts are when you're looking at a movie. Like things that you look for that you're like, okay, I'm really going to like it if they got this, but if they have that in it, nope, that's bad. You lose a mark. Yeah, I know you said that with the animals.
Yeah, well, when it comes to a good movie, I mean, I'm very flexible with that. It's like if you got good, interesting characters, if the story, sometimes a simple story is great, sometimes a complex story is great. As long as I feel like the filmmaker knows what they're trying to do. That was sometimes my issue with Ari Aster when it came to like Hereditary and Midsommar. I felt like to give an example, it was one of those things where it was very clear what they were trying to say in the first and second act, but by the third act it just kind of falls apart, and it's kind of like, well, what are we doing here? Why'd you do this? Like, so I think when you have a through line in your story, that's a solid for me. Even if I don't agree with what you end up concluding, because Beau is Afraid, I absolutely love Beau is Afraid, but it's very clear to me that Ari's viewpoint is that humans suck and that the human experience is horrible. That's what I got out of Beau is Afraid. I don't agree with that. I have more optimism for the human condition, but it was very clear he made a stance and he was like, this is what I think. And I'm like, you know what? You stuck the landing. You followed through, whether I agree with it or not. You follow through, you conveyed a story. Cool. My nose, like that just really turned me off with films. Like I said, unnecessary like violence or deaths of animals, because I just think it's just a cheap trope at this point. I also, honestly, I think the idea of, I never cared for revenge horror in the sense of like revenge rape horror or whatever. I think I hate that. Mainly because I tend to think that that's gratuitous, especially when they show certain scenes and stuff. And it's just kind of like, do we need that here to prove that they need to take out? And it's like, who is this for necessarily? And I don't care for those.
It's
and
almost
I know
kind of like mental masturbation.
Yes, exactly. And I know some people, I know that's kind of a divisive thing in the horror community, because some people, they love those. And I'm like, if that's the category, like I spit on your grave and stuff, I'm not watching that. I'm like, I'm good. I'm not watching it. Because I don't think that's good cinema. I don't think that's a real thing right there. But those are kind of my two main ones. Unnecessary like gore for gore's sake. I don't mind it if they lean into it. Like it's like, listen, we're all like, those what is it called?
Kind of like the Evil Dead movies, like where you see Ash just drill the chainsaw into the tree, and next thing you know, boom, you see blood explode everywhere.
Like if that's the aesthetic, if you're leaning into it and that's your aesthetic, I love it. But if you're doing that to cover up the fact that you don't really have a plot or you don't have a story, then it's like, okay, so what are we doing here? I mean, because at a certain point, I'm just watching people be tortured. But it depends. Like I have a like-hate situation with like the Strangers movies, because I feel like a lot of those movies, you kind of already know no one's going to make it out alive. And the reason why I love horror, one of the reasons why horror is one of my favorite genres, isn't because of the fear or the death, right? My thing is the human overcoming those things. Like, I just think that's really awesome because, it's taking these fearful things and you're watching a battle of humans potentially overcoming that. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they don't, but you're watching that journey and there's a chance. So for me, nihilistic horror that is just completely void of joy or some kind of hope, I don't really care for those either.
Yeah, I don't get that either. I can't get that either, but I grew up pretty much bowing to the altar of the Big Lebowski. So I'm very much so anti-nihilist, like, and I'll do like Walter, say what you want about the tenets of National Socialism, dude, but at least it's an ethos.
Yes. It's it's one of those.
You got to have some kind of like at the end. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say kind of like, and I make this example when I talk about it. Like you look at the ending of Texas Chainsaw. She's on the back of the pickup. Like, yes. Oh, yes, I got out. Like, okay, she was about a heartbeat away from getting turned into stew, and she just barely got out of there. Yeah, she deserves all right in the world to laugh her ass off on that.
Exactly. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my fave horror films, and it's so visceral. Like there's so much carnage and crazy stuff going on. And then at the end, she makes it. And it's like, you know what? I'm here for that. And of course, all the themes that Tobe Hooper, put within it when it came to like the Vietnam War and things like that, so I love that stuff too. But I was like, this is great. Someone made it. When I watch movies like The Stranger, where it's just like, I'm already told everybody dies. Why am I sitting here? Like, I can watch the news for this. I can watch the news to hear the ending that someone didn't make it out. Why would I want to sit here and watch a movie where the characters you've got let me get to know have no chance? And I know that. It's just kind of weird to me. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't vibe with that kind of stuff. And I know some people are into it because, once again, you have people who, for what their own reasons, film entertainment can be cathartic for people. And sometimes it's confirmation bias, where some people watch stuff and they're like, I like watching this because it lets me know I'm not the only person that thinks like this or whatever. But for me, I'm like, I'm not trying to sit somewhere that just gonna depress me when I come out. I just don't care for those kind of things. I don't really think it adds anything for people, I like entertainment that kind of empowers people to a certain degree, in the sense of, and I don't mean like just about certain issue, but just like in the human condition. It's like Friday 13th is like one of my fave horror franchises. And I'm just like, I love me some Friday the 13th and I love me some Jason. But I love those final girls and guys a lot more than I like Jason. And I love that even when he kills everybody, there's always one or two that can take him out. And I love that final battle with them,
Yeah.
Because it matters.
I think probably the one fight in Friday the 13th that probably sticks out the most is Jason Takes Manhattan at the end when his mask is off and he's like, and he sees the big rush of water coming through the sewer line. And he's like, okay, this is it. And it's almost like a complete revert 180, like on how he goes to kill. Like the camp counselor opens up the door, sees Jason, and he's got like half a second to process, I'm dead. Jason had the same reaction right then and there.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought that was an interesting one because it kind of leaned a lot more into Jason's childhood trauma, and it was like, okay, we're getting into that for Jason, and they kind of went with that linear line, that kind of through line and theme with him. One of my fave battles in the Friday the 13th is the one with Tina. And she's my fave final girl of Friday the 13th because she had the powers, and she when she takes off his mask, she breaks his mask through her powers, and that was one of the best looking Jasons. I thought, like, just they did so well with that design of Jason for that movie, the whole undead look and everything. But it was a real battle. Like, you knew Jason was like, oh, I got someone who can really go up against me, let's battle, huh? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's go. You're like watching it, you're like, yeah, Tina, yeah. And I'm just, it's one of my fave Friday the 13th, and I'm just like, that's what's up, you know? Like, you know, it's a battle. You know, she has her vulnerability, but she also has her chance to find her strength, you know?
Let me ask you this. You've seen Freddy versus Jason, right? Mm-hmm. Me and my son, we go back and forth on this debate every couple months on who really won at the end on the final battle. What's your take on who won?
Well, I think it depends. Like, you know, because we got that wonderful random monologue from Freddy in the beginning where he like tells you his whole plan, to breaks fourth wall and tells you his whole thing is to get people to remember him. People have forgotten about Freddy. I need people to remember me. So in that sense, I think he won in his goals and his objectives. So he doesn't really die because now he's back in the minds of people. But it was interesting because they kind of made it seem towards the end that Jason was the good guy in comparison to Freddy. Like, he was kind of the manipulated lesser evil. So I think it depends. I think physically, of course, Jason won with the help of the humans for their gain. But I think in the same sense, I think Freddy got what he wanted to.
Yeah, I always say it was Freddy, not just because of what you said, but at the end of the fight, at the end scene, you see Jason walk out the lake, holding Freddy's hand, and all you see is Freddy's eyes open up, look at the camera, wink.
Yeah.
You know, that little wink. And I'm a big Jason guy. Friday the 13th is my comfort zone for horror movies. That and the Evil Dead franchise. Yeah. Those are my comfort. Those are my comfort horror movies. But I got to call it down the middle on that one. I say Freddy won. My son, he'll swear until he's blue in the face. Nah, Jason did. He beat him to a pulp. He ripped his head off. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nah, dude, you got to think about it on a deeper level, man.
Yeah, no, like, I agree. Like, I think on the sense of what Freddy wanted. And I mean, just looking at all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, we know he's eternal because of the fact that he's not a physical entity per se. So it's like, yeah, can you really beat him completely? Probably not. As long as he is still in someone's mind and someone's thoughts, he has a chance to be. So in that sense, you can never really keep him down. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, Jason got his agency back because he didn't have that. Freddy was manipulating him, took him to Elm Street. Jason's like, yo, this ain't Crystal Lake. You know, like, where's my, like, I have a reason why I want my, you know, my revenge and stuff. So, I think it depends. I think, and like for the longer arc of back in the zeitgeist, back in people thinking about me, Freddy got what he wanted. In that immediate battle, I would say Jason is no longer Freddy's tool, at least. So in that sense, Jason won there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is 1,000 times better way to explain it than I ever do to my kid, to my son. And he's 15 now, and he's very much so, he likes horror, and he's very much so into the right way to say it. Yeah, he's pretty much like a gore whore. He digs more of the
Oh,
gore
okay.
kind of horror
Yeah, yeah.
as opposed to like the screw with your head psychological kind,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we grew up with.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he's a teenager. What most teenage boys like to do, they want to learn on how to exercise and work out. So he asked me to help coach him. I'm like, okay. So I have him doing rounds on cardio at home. I have a bike, and he's on that. It's in the basement, and there's a TV set up down there. He asks, "Can I watch a movie while I'm doing this? What do you want to watch? Can I watch Terrifier?
Oh my
If you
gosh.
freak out in the middle of the night," and I told this to a friend of mine. She was on the show a little while ago. I told him, if you watch this, you can watch it, but if you freak out at any point during the middle of the night, it's on you. It's on you. Got
Yeah.
me? Got it.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, he's just calm as can be. Just looks at me. Can a human body really make that much blood? That was his take from it. Like, not that that was really practical effects. That was all effects. But glad to see you ain't freaked out, and nice to know you're not going to try and get me in my sleep now. Thanks.
I know, right? Like that's one of the things too. Like I would imagine as a parent, I mean, that's always one of the things. I'm like, I don't want to end up raising someone who wants to be Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't like. Can you imagine being the parent of the serial killer? Like, I mean, I don't got to worry about my cats killing anybody.
Yeah. Well, I got Jack Skellington. I got Jack Skellington tattooed on my arm.
Oh, okay.
Can't really see it, and I showed him Nightmare Before Christmas when he was like 3 or 4 years old. And my mom, very much so being a grandparent, oh, don't do that. You're scared the baby. Really? Come on now. This is my boy. He ain't going to get scared. And if anything, first time I showed him Ghostbusters, he was right around the same age. He got mad because they didn't have enough ghosts in it. That was his first reaction. Why weren't there more ghosts?
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, I feel like, for me, when it came to horror, my mom, one of the first movies I was at in the theater, I don't remember it because I was like literally an infant, was Freddy Part 2. Because that was back when the movies used to be in the theater for like a year before. Like nowadays they're in there for like a month or 2 months and then they're on streaming. But back in the day, it used to be, they used to have a whole year where a movie was playing in a theater somewhere. So around that time when Nightmare on Elm Street 2 came out, I was a baby, I was an infant, and my mom took my brother to see it. And so that was my first thing, but it wasn't like I was aware of it. And I was actually afraid of Freddy Krueger growing up, because I'm the baby of my family, of that generation of my family. And everyone who was immediate close to me were the boys. The girls were a little bit older. So I was the one girl with all the boys. And what they would do when we were over my grandfather's house, because he had a big house, and they would all disappear and start being outside and be like, Chauncey, because they knew I was afraid of Freddy Krueger, and it would freak me out. And then somewhere along the line, I just started really getting into horror, and it just clicked. I think because I wanted to conquer my fear of Freddy. And so I think on some level in doing that, it was like a gateway to all the other ways of it. So I think it can go both ways. It's like either we love it from the very beginning or something clicks and we're like, you know what, this is pretty cool. Especially when you find a type, because horror is not a monolith, right? There's so many subgenres of it, and not everyone likes the same subgenres. That's another thing. They try to put us in a box as horror fans where it's like, oh, you guys just want to see people bloodied and da, 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 da. And it's like, no, not everyone. Some people like that, and that's completely valid and fine. Some of us, we like ghost stories more and biblical horror and angels and demons and things. That's completely fine too, I think it just depends what you're into.
Yeah, I'm weird in the sense of when growing up as a kid, I was deathly afraid of Chucky from Child's Play. From like the time I saw it for the first time, I was like 4, until I was like 14, I was deathly afraid of Child's Play. And my nephew, he was 4 years old. My sister got him a My Buddy doll as a,
Yeah.
and anytime he'd come near me, Uncle Timmy, look, come here, we want to play. I'm like, no, buddy, bud,
Like, get away
no,
from me.
Uncle Tim's good. Like you could see me crawling up the wall out of fear on it. But yeah, I'm like that. Like, I love the monster genres, the old school Universal stuff.
Yeah.
Love them. The zombie genre, I could break that down. We could do an entire episode in and of itself, and I could break down the science on that. On the zombies with no problem. But yeah, it's the zombie stuff, monster stuff, I was cool with all day when I was a little kid. I could watch that, go right to bed, and wake up the next morning, no problem. I even so much as think I heard a commercial for he's saying, "Sorry, Jack, Chucky's back." I would be up half the night, like, can't sleep. He'll get me. Can't sleep.
Yeah.
I was weird like that.
No, I get that. I feel like with Chucky, I feel like with Chucky or any of the movies that had dolls and stuff and then like Puppet Master and everything, I just made sure I treated my dolls and stuff nicely. That was my whole thing. I used to have a praying doll because that was the thing. And it was a doll that helped you pray. It was like the feet were Velcro or whatever like that. And I used to draw on her. I used to be like drawing crosses, all types of stuff on her. And then when I think Chucky came on television or something, like a WB11 Sunday afternoon movie or something. And I was like, oh. And I was like, and then suddenly I was like, I need to stop treating my dolls badly because I don't want them to wake up and kill me. Like that was the lesson I got. Not so much afraid, just like a cautionary tale of I don't want that to be me. Although Chucky has a different origin of he's actually just a serial killer in a body. But then you had like Puppet Master and all the other stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna treat my toys nicely from here on out.
Yeah, and if Toy Story was made, if Toy Story could have been made as like a 13 or R-rated movie, if they could have fleshed it out if they wanted to, in that kind of sense of toys coming to life. Well, what do you think they're going to do when they come across that kid, Sid? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I make that joke all the time. Like, if they wanted to, they could have made Toy Story into a horror movie.
Yeah.
Sid Frankensteined a whole bunch of toys. Well, guess what? All of Frankenstein's monsters are back and they want him.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's just so many elements of, and that's the great thing about the genre because there's so many things that, there's so many things they can turn into a horror style. Like with the whole internet world and Unfriendly and all this other stuff, they can make anything turn into, this could be a scary movie. Apps.
Or what's it? My son watched it. He was hooked on it for a little while. That Winnie the Pooh one, Blood and Honey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He saw that. Yeah. That was my reaction because he watched it. He said, "Oh, Dad, I loved it. You got to watch this with me." Like, okay, we'll do that for movie night. And I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
They did this to Pooh Bear.
I know.
And then he found that. And then he somehow found the horror movie version of The Grinch, the mean one.
Oh, yeah. That was out. Was that last year?
Yeah, that came out almost like 2 weeks after Blood and Honey. Mm-hmm. It almost came out. That came out almost immediately after Blood and Honey. Yeah. And now he's just chomping at the bit, waiting for Blood and Honey too.
Yeah, and they're doing a whole like universe, Whoverse of like the, and I have this is my thing about stuff like that. I don't mind when people take nursery stories or childhood stuff and make it horror because, like I said, horror can be made into anything. I just ask that the story be good. I'm just like, just don't make it a gimmick. And that was my issue with Blood and Honey. It's felt so gimmicky because I honestly was like, if you take Pooh Bear and friends out of this, it is literally just a movie about some people some weirdos in the woods killing people. There's no real kind of connection to the story except Christopher Robin and them being some kind of weird human morphed animals. And that was about it. The story doesn't really do anything else. And it just really leaned on that. And I feel like, because I know they're trying to do that with Mickey Mouse too, but they're doing like that with Steamboat Mickey, because that's coming up for that's coming out of copyright. So there's a Mickey horror movie coming, and I'm just like, everything doesn't need a horror movie, especially if you're not gonna actually really be creative with the plot. That's all I ask. I'm like, just be creative with the plot. That's all.
Yeah.
Barbie was able to do it. It's not horror, but they were able to do it at least with a story about Barbie in an interesting way. I'm like, that's all I asked. You know, when I first heard there was going to be a Barbie movie, I was like, what? But I was pleasantly surprised. It wasn't my fave movie, but I was pleasantly surprised it was smart the way they incorporated it. You know, and that's all I asked. I'm like, just be smart about it. And I just felt like Blood and Honey was not smart about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, back to what you were saying about good storytelling with it, I'm all for that's one of my big things. What's the story? Is it actually a good story, and does it catch? And, you know, if you're going to do one off of old nursery rhymes and all, instead of just doing it like the kind you see in preschool, up the ante. Up the ante some. Go into the Grimm Fairy Tales version of it. Like, what was it? Hansel and Gretel, the Grimm Fairy Tale version. The witch actually ate the kids, and then the huntsman gutted the witch and to get the kids out of her stomach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why not incorporate that in a way to where in storyline wise it makes sense. Yeah. You know, not just like some dollar store Blu-ray disc. Hey, it's a special kind of thing for a movie.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think there's elements where it's like, let's make it so that it's imaginative and that there's a story there. And there's ways of doing that. And there's ways of because every story's been told. That's the thing too. Every story's been told. You're not really creating anything that someone hasn't done somewhere, sometime in history. So at the end of the day, it's really what you can make it. And so when something's just tacked on, but it's still the same old, I don't really think that helps anybody. I don't really think that adds anything. And, you know, that's the thing about any genre. Like, horror gets a bad rap from people who think they're like above horror. It's like, oh, that's schlock or whatever. But there's so much all throughout history of cinema history and stuff of some really great horror. But in that same vein, there's a lot of duds. There's a lot of stuff where it's like, no, I would imagine if those were the only type of ones you saw, I'd probably dislike this genre too. You know?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of schlock out there, you know?
Yeah. Because I mean, like, back when I was in my early 20s, me and my brother, we always joked around, would call it our MST3K night, where we'd go and find the cheesiest B movie we could get imaginable and do our own little version of Mystery Science on it and do our own commentary while we're doing it. And we would do that with a couple different horror movies. Mm-hmm. It was all ones that you just look, you're like, yeah, this is horrible. Like, it was, I'm trying to think, it was called Terror Tune, I think. It was, They shot it in like 3 days, and they had, the acting was worse than cardboard acting. And it was just like, it looked like it got filmed in like a basement the entire time. Just, we would do stuff like that. So, yeah.
I think it just depends. Like, I mean, I've seen stuff done on a shoestring budget that I actually was like, oh, this is pretty good. Because you know what? The story was good. They got some decent actors. The story was good. Yeah, it's a shoestring budget. It all got filmed in one room. But you know what? This is actually pretty interesting because to me, I always think the story is king when it comes to, at the end of the day, because you can have we've had a lot of flashy films in general that just kind of have done poorly, and you have the industry kind of being like, what's wrong? No one wants to go to the movies anymore. Da, da, da. And it's like, well, because you're throwing the same stuff at them, and because you spent $300 billion on it or whatever, you think, oh, it has a lot of bells and whistles, everyone should love it. And it's like you're missing the point of having a good story. You're missing the point of doing something different that people actually are interested in. So I think when the industry listens to that, we get better. But when they're just kind of leaning into IPs and just kind of the same old, it doesn't matter what your budget is. It's still going to be, it can still not galvanize people. I think that's what the MCU is going through right now, to be honest. So
Yeah. But I got my own theories on like about what the whole problem with horror is. One, like you were saying, with making flashy movies instead of trying to make ones that are like quick cash grabs. Like,
yeah,
look at Five Nights at Freddy's.
mm-hmm.
Everyone that played the game knows, yeah, that game can be scary as
Yes.
hell. You go and you watch the movie, you're like, well, the only positive side is that it had Matt Lillard, but that's about it. But, you know, and you look at Five Nights at Freddy's compared to the Nicolas Cage carbon copy that came out before it, Willy's
Yeah.
Wonderland. Willy's Wonderland is a million times better.
Mm-hmm.
But also, and this is just me thinking out loud, I think it's also they push more so to try and have the movies PG-13 as opposed to R, just to try and get a few more butts in seats.
Yeah.
And that's where the fan in me and the business part in me is like, they'll argue like, I get the reason, but my God, does this suck? How much better would it be if they could have just been, if they just would have said, you know what, screw it, we're going with an R.
No, I get you. And I think that is the thing we grapple with when it comes to certain movies we see. Like, I remember when they announced the Blade reboot. And I love me some Blade. Like, I love Wesley Snipes as Blade. People don't give him credit for bringing back comic book movies because people used to crap. And like, Blade was the first in the Marvel universe. Y'all, give him some credit because
if it wasn't for Blade, if it wasn't for Blade, Marvel would have gone bankrupt.
Exactly. And so when they announced it, but then there were murmurs that it was going to be PG-13, I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This movie cannot be PG-13 and be good. Like, you're missing. You can't do it that way. And so I got it because, and I mean, I'll also admit I'm a little biased because I'm a DC girl, I'm a Batman girl, so I got my issues with Marvel sometimes, especially the cinematic universe, because I do think it's more not kiddie, but I do think they play it safer because they're about maximizing the profit over sometimes the story. And so that worked when they had lightning in a bottle with the first couple of years of their movies. But now it's like people want something different. That's why the Eternals didn't do as well as it could have done, because people were like, well, what's this? They tried something different, but they didn't put the real groundwork in there. And so at the end of the day, it's like, there has to be more than just, the money and then, let's make it so people can bring their kids. And it's like, okay, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Because, if the story sucks, the people ain't going to want to bring their kids anyway. Like, there's movies that are particularly for that kind of audience that do it much better. You don't have to fake the funk and try to make your movie that should be R family friendly. Like, just let it be R. I mean, I think we're seeing that in a way with Deadpool. It's not my favorite. I like the first one, didn't care for the second one. But, it's R, and there was always the joke when it first started that Ryan Reynolds really had to push them to let him have it be R because, once again, Marvel was not trying to do R. They were like, what are you doing? We're trying to maximize profits. But it's like, okay, you understand to tell this particular story, you got to let him have a different rating. And I think it works for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And get that. And yeah, it's really. So let me ask you this. Since you're a big Batman girl, let me ask you, who's your favorite Batman? Outside of Adam West.
Oh, okay.
As far as on-screen Batman, who's
Michael
your favorite
Keaton.
one?
Michael Keaton.
Okay. You're probably going to get mad at me on mine.
Oh, you're not going to say Clooney, are you?
Oh, good God, no. No, that's blasphemous.
I was going to say, listen.
No, I was going to say, I'm saying Ben Affleck because his version was almost a was a great copy of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns story. And that's my all-time favorite Batman story. Like the second I those are my absolute favorite ones out of any Batman story that's been done since he was first introduced back in like 38. So yeah. Have you ever read that one?
I have. My father is a huge the way I got into it, my father and my brother were like huge comic book people. The joke is that I'm gonna inherit my father's room of comics when he passes on. And so I've read so many. Ours was on Marvel side is the Hulk. I have a lot of Hulk comics and I got a lot of Hulk stuff in certain parts of my house. And then it's Batman on the other end. I never cared for Superman. And so I love me all the iterations of Batman for the most part. And so except I don't like the way they kind of alienate the Bat family when it comes to other stories, because I do feel like DC has a tendency, we're getting comic book nerdy here, but like I do think DC has a tendency to, I know Batman is it, you know, but they have a tendency to throw other characters by the wayside and kind of erase their history when it comes to trying to exalt the Bat family. And so for me, I thought Ben Affleck had a lot of potential as Batman. I definitely didn't think he was the worst one, for sure. That's Clooney. But like, I definitely didn't think that. I thought Ben Affleck had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, he didn't get to have that realized because of all the stuff around the Snyder cut and things
then
like
he
that.
had to deal with his personal issues
and
also,
his personal issues and stuff. And I would have loved a solo Batman movie of him, because I think it would have been very interesting. He was definitely a Batman that was tired, right? He was a Batman that was jaded, gone through some stuff and everything like that. I love me some Michael Keaton Batman, because his was a little bit more optimistic and a little bit more like, you know, I'm Bruce, but I'm also kind of, you know, I'm Batman. Like, it's just like,
see, we're showing our age here, folks.
Right? And it's just like, it's so like, it just works so well. And I love me Michelle Pfeiffer as that Catwoman. And you know, Danny DeVito as Penguin. Like, there were so many. I think it worked because he was also in, to me, some of the best Batman movies. And I think it just worked. I think Ben Affleck had a lot of potential. I just feel like it never got fully realized. It was there. It was definitely there, but it never got a chance to get realized, unfortunately. And, you know, that's where we're at with the DCU in general. I know some people have hopes that Gunn is going to do well with it. I so far have not been impressed with a lot of the decisions he's been making when it comes to...
I'm very delusionally optimistic.
That's good. I'm being very reserved on that, because I just think he's thrown some of the baby out with the bathwater in terms of just kind of... And I get wanting to wipe the slate clean because maybe the Snyder stuff has a lot of baggage, but I also think there were certain things that were good in that. So, but I also admit my bias. I've never been excited for Superman. So I'm like, why is the emphasis? Why do we always have to start with a Superman movie? But the guy looks like a carbon copy of Henry. So I'm just like, why'd you get rid of Henry if you were just gonna bring in the younger version of this guy? And you didn't really need to bring in a younger version. Not every character. It's kind of like when they never let Peter Parker grow up. It's like Peter Parker, there's a whole thing of him being a grown ass man. Like, we don't always have to have Peter in high school and college. You know, him and MJ, they get married at some point. Like, he has a job, he has a career. And sometimes I feel like they perpetually always want certain characters in one particular life state, you know. Superman, he just got from the, you know, he just lost his his dad, and it's just like, oh my gosh,
Martha,
right? It's just like,
sorry, I had to do that one.
Like,
did you see the
stuff.
Did you see the trailer for Creature Commandos, the animated series that's supposed to drop in December?
No, I haven't.
It's an animated series. It's supposed to be Creature Commandos. It's kind of like Suicide Squad. It's like a Suicide Squad team, but with monsters. They got the Bride of Frankenstein, G.I. Robot, and Weasel with
Oh,
Rick Flag Sr.
okay.
Yeah. So, they also got, almost forgotten. I'm pretty sure somebody will get mad at me on it. Dr. Phosphorus.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So, that's supposed to be the introduction. I know Gunn's working on Superman. He also announced he's gonna start working on Peacemaker soon as well. That's
Love
supposed
him
to
some
be now
Peacemaker.
part of. That's gonna now be, yeah. The first season is gonna be its own separate thing. The new season 2, when that comes out, that's gonna be tied into the new universe.
And this is the issue with my issue with Gunn is I actually like Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. I did not care for the other ones because I think he likes his offbeat characters. He does. He likes those characters a lot of people don't know about and things like that. And I think that's fine, but I do think you have to respect the OGs and the staples because that is what brings people in. And then you can introduce them to those characters that maybe a lot of people don't know about. So, and I also maintain that some of the best DC movies I have seen were the animated ones. I mean, Flashpoint, all of those were like some of the best DC movies. And I always was saying, why don't they get the people who wrote the scripts for the DC animated films to come write the ones for the live action?
Oh, I've said that a million
like,
times
oh my
before.
gosh, bring them
I
over
said that
here.
before.
They're great
Like,
over there.
What was it when they announced the trailer for the Batman Hush animated movie?
Oh, yeah.
And now I said point blank, how messed up is it that the animated universe has a better line of continuity than the actual live action one?
I know. I was just like, I love me some DC animated. And the thing is, people always think they're like, because it's animated, that it's childish. And I'm like, you haven't watched these movies. Like, animation is just another version of telling a story. There's nothing
it's a different art form.
Yeah, it's nothing inherently kiddie about that has it doesn't have to be inherently childish or child-centric just because it's animated, So animation kind of gets a short end of the stick when it comes to being respected, I feel like.
Yeah, because probably one of the most fundamental animes out there is Akira. And that came out in 88, and that's still widely regarded today as one of the best out there that ever came out. And that is, if that was done in a live action format, oh my God, people would be screaming up and down saying it's like a Blade Runner carbon copy, blah, blah, blah stuff.
Yeah.
But it was an anime, and it had a great story to it. But let me ask you now also, what goes into being a producer? Because I know you said you got that on there as like one of your big taglines. Sorry, my camera keeps jumping. But you got that as like one of your first taglines for like your Twitter and all, saying you're a producer. What goes into that? Because I'm always curious about like what gets done in the production aspect on making any kind of work, on any kind of filming or anything.
Well, right now that's kind of a newer venture for me. I recently got a manager and an agent, Karen Tunis, who also is the manager for Orlando Jones and things and others. And so I'm basically right now I've been writing scripts for television and television series. So when those go into production and whatnot, I'd be kind of overseeing the story and like the thing and what would go into how that would play out on screen. So that's a newer thing for me. That was one of the things where like blessed enough to like get the chance to be represented and writing scripts for television and stuff and projects in the works. So that's why the producer thing is there. So I haven't had a chance to like really dig deep into it, but I feel, lucky enough to start that journey.
Well, I hope you wish you nothing but the best of luck on that.
Thank
It's
you.
filmmaking, doing videos and all that. That's always been like a little hobby and interest of mine ever since I was a little kid. Like I used to steal my dad's video camera and make movies with my action figures. So I would always get yelled. My dad would always say, "Oh, don't watch those behind the scenes, how they make it stuff. It'll ruin the movie for you." No, I want to learn on how they do the stuff. Like I was, again, horror nerd. I was that little like 12-year-old kid that was watching how George Romero made Night of the Living Dead. And I was just like, oh, wow. Seeing on how he did it and all.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah, I want to know. I've always been curious about like the behind the scenes, the production aspect of it. And I think that's just like a great, and that's like a big untold story on filmmaking.
Yeah, and that's, with the series that I have on the Dead Meat channel, Production Tales from Hell, one of the things for the first season that we did, I just find it fascinating what goes into the context of making a film. And, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek to say it's layers of hell because, yeah, it can be very stressful to put out films and television and things like that. And so one of the great things I love when I'm writing the scripts for that show was just kind of finding out new things, new challenges that the team dealt with. I mean, of course, the movies I cover on that series are more in the extreme, depending on what part of the process of production they're in. But every time I do it, at the end of it, I have so much more of an appreciation for the horror movies that did make it to the screen, because to hear what a lot of them have gone through is, I think it makes you appreciate it more, that the storytelling that they were able to convey, knowing what they went through to get there.
Yeah. So, and I say this to everyone when they come on the show, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. You could have been out there doing a million different things. You chose to sit here. You got my eternal thanks for that. And you're more than welcome to come back anytime you ever feel like it. All you ever have to do is just give a holler, or, I'll always give you a holler. If you got your socials, anything in particular you want to give a plug on real quick, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, no, thanks so much for having me. I've enjoyed talking about a wide range of things that I love and am interested in. Well, if you haven't watched the first season of Production Tales from Hell, that is available on the Dead Meat channel on YouTube with 6 million subscribers. We love Dead Meat, James and Chauncey. They do the kill count. If you haven't seen those are some great. That's a great series, and Production Tales from Hell is under their production company there, and look out for season 2 at some point. And also I have my website, Chauncey K Robinson, where I do the Twisted Girl Next Door reviews on horror. You can also find me on Rotten Tomatoes, where when I do a review, it does end up on there. But I love for you to come check out my website. And yeah, I'm on Twitter arguing with people. If you want to find me there at Miss Chauncey KR.
I've seen that, and I've seen you step to people, and I give you mad credit because they come at you like, oh, she don't know what she's talking about. And I'm just like, let me get some popcorn. This is going to be a good show right here.
And what's so funny? When I end up on there, they be thinking I'm so like, and it's literally in between me doing everything else in my day, because I work from home. So I'm like typing, I'm looking at my new writing project, I'm finishing something. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to look at it. Okay, let me do this real quick. And then I just put it away and go on Reddit or something. It's just like people have to touch grass, y'all, because they are angry on there. I don't even know why I'm still on Twitter. It's kind of like watching a train wreck you can't turn away from, Twitter, X, whatever it is. And I just jump into the
You got to do like Coming to America. It's mama named it Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter.
Yes, exactly. It's mama named it Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter. That's a good one. I'm going to use that because it's true. It's true. Yeah. But it's crazy on there. I do enjoy it, though. I enjoy it for the sake of you have no F's to give when you're on there after a certain point. You just realize it's the Thunderdome on Twitter, man. It's just a Thunderdome on there at this point.
Yeah,
There's
it's
no
like the
rhyme or reason.
Coliseum. It's like
It
the
really
Coliseum, and they
is.
said it's fight or flight.
It really is. At this point, when I want a more calm situation, I go to Reddit. And that's crazy because Reddit usually in those threads you're going at it sometimes too. But at this point, Reddit is more of the calm space than Twitter is for me. But I enjoy it because I like taking people to task sometimes. It's a nice exercise in like logic.
Every now and then you got to take them to the woodshed.
That part, yes.
Yeah, you got to give them a good old-fashioned coming to Jesus meeting.
Yes.
For those that know what that is, y'all know. All right, Seth, thank you again for coming on. You're more than welcome anytime.
Thanks for having me.